Following presentation is part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network.
Welcome to the Bombadcast.
What is going on, Bombad people? It is me, Scotty Jarrow, and I am super stoked, okay? Because I have a great episode planned for y'all. We have an amazing guest showing up today. And with all that being said, before we go into all of that, I got to mention a couple of things. We are part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network, and here at the Beyond the Blast Doors network, we've got amazing shows for every day of the week. Currently, our lineup is Holo Chronicles on Monday with all your toys, updates, and news. You've got Tuesday with Around the Galaxy, Pete Fletzer's show, fantastic show. It's like the David Letterman of Star Wars. You got every Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Beyond the Blast Doors Live, which my guest has actually been on, and that's with David Almalotti. All your updates on Star Wars news. Every Friday is Streaming Star Wars, which are kind of like our recap show. We got a morning one and an afternoon one about The Mandalorian, and you know that has been incredible. And for Saturday, today, the day this drops, Saturday, you have the Bombadcast with Scotty and Jerry. Me being Scotty. Jerry unfortunately cannot join us today, but I will say this: if you like this and you want to listen to all the other shows, we are part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network. You can find us at the beyondtheblastdoors.com. If you really like us, if you think we're fantastic, you could join our Patreon, okay? And that is going to be patreon.com/Beyond the Blast Doors. All right. If you haven't yet, follow us on Twitter at Bombadcast. You can follow me at the Scott Jarrow on Twitter. And yeah, if you wanted to support all of us on Patreon, it's just $5 a month. That's it. $5. You support 5 different shows, all different types of content and stuff. And as this drops, I want to make sure you realize this, okay? As this is dropping, we've got a really big special coming up. It's going to be our Beyond the Blast Doors holiday special. Great title. And that special is going to be like this streaming Star Wars, maybe a little bit of bounty hunting, maybe even a little bit of Secret Santa stuff. Yeah, okay, it's gonna go there. But with all that being said, I'm very excited to bring in my guest today. All right. My guest is a great guy. I've talked to him before, but this is going to be the nitty gritty talk. And we're talking about Mando and something he was really big part of. Okay. And something I'm very, very fond of as well. With all that being said, our guest today is the one and only, well, apparently there's 2 Jon Knoles, but well, this one is the one that I think is probably the best one to talk to. Here we go. My guest today is Jon Knoles. Jon Knoles, how are you doing, my friend?
Good. And you, Scotty?
I'm doing fine, man. As you can tell, you know, we're here to talk about this incredible episode of The Mandalorian we just got on Friday.
No, it's pretty short but sweet.
That's the thing. I know, and that's like a really good way to kind of kick it off. Like, this episode was seriously brief, but it had so much in it to unpick and just to like tear apart. I don't know. You I guess tell my listeners about you, because they might not have a chance to look into the name here on the title.
Okay, yes. So my name is Jon Knoles. For 14 years, I think I worked at LucasArts Entertainment Company from 1990 to 2004, and in that time I made a lot of Star Wars games. One of which was Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which came out in 2002. And now I work on Forza. So the makers of Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon series, that's Playground Games. Forza Motorsport just turned 10. I work at Turn 10 Studios in Redmond, Washington.
That's awesome. That's great. And I don't know, you have a pretty heavy legacy with the LucasArts company, as I would consider. And I've been a big fan of the game that's actually right above my head currently since it came out in 2002. And probably shouldn't be playing it in 2002.
On your ceiling?
Yes, right. And literally, when I lay in night today, I look at it and I'm waiting for the day. I'm just gonna send it to you, and you're gonna sign it, and then I'll put it right back up there, and I can just go.
That's the coolest piece of art. Corey Allemeyer did lots of cool art for Bounty Hunter, but that was his absolute best. That cover image rocks.
I literally made it my background. Hold on, like for today's show. Like it's so sick, so sick. So yeah, I don't know. I think we should start off with the Mando episode just because it's such a fresh thing, and I really haven't had a chance to talk about it with anyone yet. Honestly, and you know, I'm sure I know you've seen every episode. You're a Star Wars fan.
Oh yeah.
And this one for me, and not just because of Boba Fett, the way it was done and the way it was told is my favorite episode. Like it really is.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite episode. And the thing is, you know, I'm a Star Wars fan too, but there was a big period of my life where I wasn't anymore because of circumstance and whatnot. But
yeah,
I didn't watch any Rebels. I didn't watch any Clone Wars. So I'm missing out on a lot of the love for Ashoka Tano and Bo-Katan and all these names. I'm like, who are these people? Where did they come from? Oh, you have to watch the show. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I swear to God, like Rogue One and Mandalorian have just kind of, you know, rekindled my love of Star Wars that was put in a box for quite a few years. So,
well, you know, I mean, obviously, and I know it was alluded to in our last episode together on Beyond the Blast Doors, the LucasArts ending was not so sweet, you know? And
no, a lot of us were just sent packing unceremoniously. Yeah.
I can completely understand, you know, maybe having a lack of interest, but this show, honestly, and I think, you know, we're the first ones that can attest to it. It really brought Star Wars back for me, honestly, back to the populace, right? Like you got the child, right? And that honestly, like before the week ended that week with that very first episode, everyone knew what everyone. It was as big to me as when I'm sure I wasn't there for it, but when it came out in 77, I mean, like you saw it everywhere that first season. And I just kept thinking to myself, how can they top, you know, what we happened in the first season? But here we are, and we've got Boba Fett being directed by Robert Rodriguez, who was the perfect director for it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect director for it. And I think, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I'd imagine that was probably like one of the very first times we saw a handheld camera combat scene where cool.
I've only watched it a dozen times. Those scenes over and over again. Fantastic. Yeah.
It really was. It was so spectacular. So your overall, I guess, so far with this season, I know they've had a bunch of good episodes.
Yeah.
So this is your number one.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have to say so.
It's not like you have a Mythosaur shirt on or anything right now, you know?
Is that what that is? Yes. This was the Star Wars Bounty Hunter development team shirt designed by Ian Millham, who was art director on Star Wars Bounty Hunter and now works on The Mandalorian of all things. So it's kind of cool how and also one of the concept artists who worked on the game, Amy Beth Christensen, now Christensen Smith, is also on the concept team for The Mandalorian. So that's pretty amazing.
That's just incredible. And like, I guess I want to get your first take on it. The second you heard, which I'm sure is a sound you're very familiar with, being the director of Bounty Hunter and the writer, what was it like when you heard the Slave One show up in the atmosphere?
Yeah.
Like first impression, seriously, what did you do? Did you stand up? Did you freak out?
Before that, I got to say, like, my brother has been staying here. My brother, Matt, is also in game development. He works for 2K on Civ and what's the other one? XCOM. And you know, he's a Star Wars fan too. He's the one who had all the cool toys. I was a little bit older, so I didn't have all the toys anymore.
Yeah.
He had the Slave One toy. And that was the coolest toy. So I would steal it from him all the time and, you know, play with it anyway.
Of course.
But right before the episode, he's like, "Oh, I hope this is when Boba Fett comes back." I'm like, dude, it was a one and done. The way they shot it, you know, you saw Boba Fett, he's still alive. You know, that's good. Oh, sorry, spoilers, people. Everybody here is clear. Spoilers.
Oh, yeah. This is this. If for some reason you watch this and you haven't watched Mandalorian,
if you don't know Boba's back, turn it off.
Yeah, exactly.
But I said, I think this is one and done. I mean, he just went off into the sunset, and that, maybe he's just a hermit now. Maybe he just put it all behind him, and that's done. So to see and hear, "Wah!" which it's like a trumpet mixed with a Plymouth Duster, according to Ben Burt, who did that sound back in the original days. You hear that sound again, and then you see it. It was like, oh! We both looked at each other at midnight, because we watched this at midnight when it's first on. Which, that's what this show has done to me. I am up at midnight on a Thursday to see Mandalorian, which is, I haven't, felt that way about Star Wars since I was a kid. So we're back because of the show. And that was amazing. And everything that followed for the next, whatever it was, 38 minutes, 37 minutes. It was a short episode, but it was packed full of everything that I needed to see.
Oh, of course. And that's the thing. Like that's the best part about it too. At the very beginning is you hear the slave one, and he's like, "Kid, we gotta go." And he turns around, and then the child's already, channeling whatever he's channeling in that moment.
Yeah.
And then you think to yourself, the whole rest of this episode, like I predicted, the whole rest of it's gonna be like them fighting around the child,
Yeah.
And Din trying to stop the child from getting taken. But a little small twist. I love the little small twist. You get Boba Fett, and he walks up, and I mean, he looks so badass.
I know,
it looks amazing.
Yeah, you just knew that was coming, and it was awesome to see him, open up a can of whoop ass with the multi-tool, which is at the same time a bantha toothpick,
exactly,
and a great ass kicking weapon, stormtrooper smashing weapon, and you see his power. And in his ruthlessness, which Boba Fett is always supposed to have been ruthless and badass, and you see that, and he wants his armor back, but he's going to do it again with a moral code, which his father taught him, and his father learned that from someone else, which we'll get into too, I'm sure. But it's just like he was a villain in the movies, but we know and love him because he's a badass with a moral center who just wants to do his own thing and not join anybody's party, but he has debt. But and you're like, okay, that is absolutely the way you have. And to see Tamara Morrison, take on that role again, of Boba Fett for the first time.
Yeah.
With all that, stuff that he brought to the role of Jango Fett, at least in the video game, a little bit in the movie too. It's amazing. I bet he loved every second of it.
Oh, he had to. And the line, I'm a simple man making his way through the galaxy, like my father before me. That literally, they took a Luke line and threw it in there. You know what I mean? Like my father before me. And I was like, that's so genius. And he says, I give my allegiance to no one.
That's right. That sums up what he's all about.
And there's one important thing too. And I don't know if you got this vibe. I mean, I felt like the Fennick Shan Boba vibe was a lot like the Jango Zam vibe. Like, would you say there was a little bit of the helmet and everything? I was like, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah, although it seemed like she was calling the shots a few times. Seemed like she was giving him orders. I was like, wait a second, who gives Boba Fett orders? But I think that there was certainly from her veil, right, that covers her to the fact that she's a sharpshooter who likes to work remotely.
See,
those are all similar things to Zam, and Zam was, super mysterious. And honestly, we didn't know she was a changeling until the game was almost finished.
Mm-hmm.
That got added to the movie script later, so I had to kind of work around that. But it was similar, and it's cool. And it's like, what would require a lone bounty hunter to take on a sidekick? Jango didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it with Zam, and that's why there was a lot of tension there. And I could expect there was a little bit of tension with Boba and his new sidekick as well.
That's the thing too. And I with this episode coming out, we're not done with both those characters, which is so great. Like whenever you're staying up to watch it next week, and I'm a school teacher, I wake up at 4:30 so I can watch that episode, get showered, and then go to work. And we've got 2 more episodes more than likely with the same little partnership we got going on.
I know,
which is wild.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And it was cool. Like it ends with them all saying, "All right, we're all a team. We're going to get the kid back because we made a deal, and I'm a man of my word. So
exactly,
we're going to do it." and to have him bring up his little chain code, which shows in just a couple of moments, we didn't, I'm sure people have deciphered this on the internet very quickly and everything, but in a couple of moments, it confirmed all the stuff that I remember trying to do and asking George Lucas permission to do, which was to transfer the defunct legends of Boba Fett and Jaster Muriel and the Mandalorians and all that stuff that had been built up in fan fiction until, we found out Boba Fett was a clone of Jango. Can I apply those to Jango Fett? And his answer was yes. And so that's where the story of Jaster Muriel came from, and Jango being a young boy who gets taken in under the wing of the Mandalorians, which now the term foundling, which is appropriate for Star Wars, has connected them. And so, yes, he's not a real Mandalorian born on the planet Mandalore, but he's from Concord Dawn, which is in the area of the Mandalorian sector of the galaxy, and all that, and all that stuff came from the writer Daniel Keyes Moran, who wrote that in 1995. The last one standing, I think, is what it was called. Which he proposed this idea that Boba Fett often used the pseudonym Jaster Muriel, and was a journeyman protector of the planet Concord Dawn before he became a Mandalorian. So that was the piece that I just, worked to put into the backstory. And then Hayden Blackman, the writer of Jango Fett Open Seasons, just took that much further and wrote a really great, deep backstory that the game really didn't need to get into. Yeah. But just kind of like paid homage to. And this character, Montrose, who I came up with as the Jango's nemesis for Star Wars Bounty Hunter, was to Jango, I guess, like Sergeant Barnes was to the character in Platoon. There's a good sergeant and a bad sergeant. Sergeant Barnes and Sergeant Elias, and Jaster Muriel was the Elias for Jango, and Sergeant Barnes was Montrose. And growing up as a young Mandalorian warrior, he loved both of them for different reasons, but one was really mean and brutal and and ruthless, and the other one had a moral code, and so he sensed that he kind of leaned towards him more, and he kind of went out. Jaster Muriel kind of died the same way Elias did. Like, Montrose says, well, he's dead. Montrose is the one who watched him die and left him to die. Yes. And similar to what happened in Platoon, and that all was intentional, right? Yeah. Intentional ripoff of the movie Platoon.
There we go. You heard it here first. If you know the backstory, and what was the comic run called? I forget the exact name of it. It was dang it. I had it written down over here somewhere.
You're talking about Open Seasons, the
Open Season. That's it. Yes. And I was. You're gonna love this. I had it. Is it an Action Replay, a Game Shark, one of those things? And I had it for my PS2, and Bounty Hunter was one of the codes, and I did the unlock all the special features for Bounty Hunter, and I believe the comic was on the PS2 disc, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was. You could unlock it as you played. Well, you didn't get the whole comic, but you got lots of pieces of it. And again, that was when I wrote the story background originally. I had already had this idea that Jango was going to be orphaned on the remote world, caught in the crossfire of revolt and taken under the wings of a Mandalorian named Jaster Muriel, because I was trying to, take that cool name and that cool legacy that Daniel Keyes Moran wrote and apply it to Jango Fett. But I didn't really need to get into the details of what happened then, other than, he was taken under his wing, he was raised as a Mandalorian warrior, and then had a conflict between two leaders, Jaster and Montrose. And Hayden's like, oh, this is great. I'll fill this whole thing out. Hayden Blackman wrote Open Seasons. He came up with the Mandalorian Civil Wars story as it was unfolding. And I think in my write-up, I had I'm just looking at it right here. Yeah. Here's a note. Here's an idea, which might be a bit of a reach, but it could be used for backstory, something to tie Jango and Montrose more closely. Suppose the Mandalorian who took Jango under his wing was named Jaster Muriel, the name Boba Fett later uses as an alias. Suppose the Mandalorian symbol
There we
That's
go.
what that's all I knew at the time. I didn't
Yeah.
have a name at the time. That Boba Fett later wears on his shoulder armor was an insignia for Muriel's regiment. Suppose Montrose had killed Muriel during a battle when Jango was younger, in his 20s, so here's the platoon reference,
Mhm.
and took the armor, keeps it on his trophy wall. Later on, when Jango defeats Montrose, he goes back and gets the armor. And anyway, so that could be an interesting side story that the game didn't need to get into, other than
Sure,
just
sure.
references. And we wouldn't make more than a passing reference to it. And so that's kind of the backstory I passed on to Hayden, and he wrote some really amazing story about, Visla and the Death Watch and the
Yes.
true Mandalorians and these warring factions. And it's kind of cool that here we are watching the greatest show on TV right now, and
Yes.
Boba pulls up his little thing,
Uh-huh.
and
Code.
if it's translated, I can't remember all of it, but it was like
Mhm.
Fett, Boba, son of
Yep.
Jango, mentor, Jaster Muriel, or Jast or something like
Yeah.
that. It
Talk.
was annotated, but it's
Uh-huh.
like, yes, okay, like
Well,
keep
how does that
passing
feel?
it along. It's
No,
great. I mean, again, I didn't invent this stuff. I
no, I
think,
know, but still,
but
you,
but
you,
part of my role was to save the stuff that we loved in the Boba Fett fan lore and pass it on to Django, and now it's being passed on, in the Mandalorian, and it just gives Boba some roots that actually matter.
yes, it does. And you got to realize this too. I think one of the best things this show's been doing is making Din, question the Mandalorian way and the heritage of Mandalorian. Obviously, he meets Bo-Katan, who just instantly, boop,
Yeah,
takes
never.
off his helmet.
Mandalorian
He's
doesn't
like,
wear take the helmet
he's
off.
like,
What are you doing?
whoa, like you're not a Mandalorian. And then later, that question's kind of, it's weird. It's one part fatherhood and then one part Mandalorian. What does it mean to be a Mandalorian? And like it seems like every other episode has like dealt with that subject. But this episode we just got was like the first one took both of them, right? You've got Boba, who is a descendant of a foundling, which is really interesting because Din himself is a foundling who has lost a dad, Boba. And then you've got now Din Djarin, who has lost his son. So I think it's really kind of beautiful because obviously your story, Bounty Hunter, did an amazing job of showing, Jango desiring more than just being a cold-blooded killer.
Right, and that's the whole reason he was an orphan who was picked up by the Mandalorians. Was that I needed to answer the question, why would Jango want a son? Because of course in episode 2, the only thing he asks, the only thing you learn from Ton Wei when she's explaining to Obi-Wan, we paid him a considerable amount of money, plus the only unaltered clone for himself. Oh,
yes.
That's curious, isn't it? And yes, that was awfully curious. So why would Jango want an unaltered clone for his son was the driving force behind that whole story. And so that's where the orphan idea came from. Like he has to have been an orphan who a father, a father figure took him on, and now he wants to carry that on. And it's great to see this in the Mandalorian, and it's all very much and a lone wolf and cub type of arrangement in the Mandalorian, which I also love, which is the great Japanese manga, which and series that involves a Ronin and a child, and it's great to see it all stay together and be consistent in that way. It's like I remember during the beginning of Bounty Hunter, I had to submit to George Lucas 10 questions. I think might have been more than 10, but it was the best way to get good answers from him is to send him yes or no questions in a manila envelope addressed to G.W. Well, George Walton, and it would go to his office and he would answer them. And that's how I was instructed to do this. And among the questions were, can I explain why Jango wanted a son? Can I explain the origins of the Slave One spaceship? Can I apply some of the now defunct legends of Boba Fett to Jango Fett? And the list kind of went on and on that way.
Sure.
And one of the quotes and everything was yes, no, yes, no. And sometimes he'd write a little bit more in the margins. And one of the things he wrote is Jango is basically a nice guy I'm looking at the quote here, with normal needs, normal human needs that wants offspring. He's sentimental. He loves his son just like anybody else would, but at the same time, he lives in a very harsh world.
Damn,
Okay,
that's
you know,
crazy. That
and
I don't know.
that helped
Do you-
set the tone. It's like, all right, he's not a villain. He's not, a murderous thug. He's a guy with his own moral code. He wants to pass on what he knows to someone else. That's why he wants his son. So let's just go with that and not base it on any other, revenge story or anything like that. It's about money and passing that money and knowledge on to somebody else.
See, that's why I like, I guess, the story so much too, is because there's a lot of development for Jango. At the very beginning, you can kind of tell he's just doing jobs. And then I guess once Roz dies, that's a big moment and obviously the story.
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact line. You definitely know it. You wrote it. It was something along the lines of there's more for you.
There's more there's more to live for. Don't make it all about the money. Which
Exactly.
actually was almost word for word what George wrote in the margins of the column when I when I asked if I could make this a revenge story as well. And he said, keep it all about the money. He's a mercenary. Don't complicate things, which was awesome feedback. So I did. Like, if you catch Kamari Vosa, this impossible crazed former Jedi, the Kaiser Soze of villains. Nobody's seen this person or heard of him, but everyone's scared to death of him. If you can catch this person and get the 5 million credits, you'll be rich, which is great. But it can't just all be about the money. You've got to. What are you going to do with all that money? What are you going to do? So that became his sort of internal quest, was to pass things on, to pass on what he knows.
And see, we're kind of getting that now. And honestly, when I was watching The Mandalorian, that very first episode before they introduced Grogu or the child or Baby Yoda, I thought it would be just like the game. I genuinely was convinced. I even went to the panel at Celebration. And they alluded nothing to the child, and and they're like, it's going to be about a bounty hunter that ends up having this crazy opportunity to go on all these different bounty chases. And I'm like, that's the game, and it's going to be crazy. They're going to tie it somehow to something nuts, and we're not going to know what's going to happen.
I don't think we've seen a bounty hunt since the first episode. As soon as he met the kid, that's what everything's been about. He's just been a wanderer. Wandering into one, troublesome scenario after the other, which you could go back to shows like The Fugitive or The Incredible Hulk or Highway to Heaven with Michael Landon. They all kind of follow that formula. Stranger drifts into town. Stranger's got an overall objective, but in the meantime, he's got to deal with this problem that these people are having or agree. Exactly. It's a great formula.
The singing cowboy. Like, it's like they all follow that trope. And it literally, I'd imagine, how George Lucas felt about morning serials is how we feel about The Mandalorian. It's like this story that gets a little bit deeper and deeper, but every episode it leads on to the next quest. And like, I just have such a blast talking about this stuff with anyone and everyone. It could be anyone from my stepdad to my students that I teach. And like, I never thought Star Wars would get to that level again where everyone wants to talk and have this stuff be discussed again, right? And I don't know, like there's so many moments from this episode alone that felt so badass and felt like a total tribute to the Bounty Hunter game, and in particular the part where Boba launches that rocket from his jetpack, and like literally just they do the little radar noise, and I think that was from the prequels, maybe, I don't know, but they do all the tropes and literally hits it, falls down, and what does Boba say when he turns around?
I was aiming for the other one.
It's just so perfect. It's so good. It's just what Star Wars needs. And I don't know. I mean, let's talk about this, because this is not even in the notes, but you were growing up, obviously, watching the original trilogy. Yeah. And Boba Fett, what did he mean to you growing up? And then getting a chance to write about his dad later must have been pretty surreal. Well, what was he like in I guess 1980 when they first showed him?
Yeah, so 1980, I expect I was around 11 years old, and Han Solo was my absolute favorite character, always will be. And I was reading the novel before the movie, because in those days the novel would come out a few weeks before the movie. So I was the first one at the Kmart or whatever when I was buying my Hot Wheels and the oh my God, new Star Wars novel. All right. So I'm reading through the novel and this is great. This is great. Oh, Han Solo has a girlfriend. That's interesting. I didn't know he liked girls, but because I'm 11 years old. Now suddenly girls are interesting. Okay.
It goes cool. Like
and then I get to the part where he gets frozen. I got so pissed I threw the book and just I thought it was dead. Like I didn't want to finish it. I was so angry. And Boba Fett was an asshole because it's because of him that this whole thing happened. And and I didn't even get to the part where, Darth Vader reveals to Luke he's his father. Like I honestly was done. An angry 11-year-old reading absolutely his fate, his hero being, killed.
Frozen. Yeah, killed.
I thought he was killed. I didn't even get to the part where Lando says he's in hibernation. Like I didn't even get to that part. So then when I saw the movie, I was, it was amazing. It's still in my mind the most transformative experience of all. That's not fair. Star Wars was the most transformative experience, but I was old enough to really grok it and understand it.
Sure.
That's your formative years, 11, 12, whatever. So a lot of deep stuff, a lot of compared to what I'd been watching or been exposed to, right? And Boba Fett was just this menacing, cool, quiet, bad guy who didn't seem bad. He just seemed like he was doing a job. And that was around the same time I started watching the spaghetti Western on TV, right? They'd show up like Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more. Those shows started showing up on reruns, whatever, at the time. And I became a huge fan of those. And I could immediately make that connection. Like, this whole bounty hunting thing is really interesting and amazing. Like these guys kind of operate on their own level. They're not really bad. They're not really good. That's pretty cool. And so years later to be, asked to do an episode 2 game and saying, no way, I'm not going to do a game of the movie, but I'm going to do a game, about the coolest character in that movie, who in my opinion was Jango Fett. And I'm going to dig some of this stuff up from the spaghetti Westerns, right? The Sergio Leone films. And I'm going to, work in some of the Boba Fett backstories as much as is needed. I really am not a fan of backstories in games. That we overdo that stuff in games, but just enough. And then come up with a spooky villain that is, if you're already a badass and your competition is a badass, you got to come up with someone who's really, really scary. So like, what's better than a whacked out Jedi who was kidnapped and tortured and suffered Stockholm syndrome, the Star Wars equivalent of Stockholm syndrome, to become, a crazy cult leader, that just saying her name will get you killed. Right. So
exactly.
Let's go there. And offer a whole bunch of money for it, because why else would you go after somebody if you're a mercenary? And then at some point along the way, have Jango start to wonder if this is what it's all about, or is there something more? And that's where the character Rosada comes in, because you can't have a badass going, I really wish I had a child to pass things on to. You can't. You have to have somebody else say that for him. So in so many ways, in so many words, she's just echoing the things that are going on in his head.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt so, I don't know, with this episode, Amanda.
And I killed them all. Like, she's dead. Rosada's dead.
Oh, yeah.
Ghost is dead. Montrose is dead. The Jester Muriel spaceship is blown up. Like, there's nothing left. I killed everything.
Exactly. You started and you killed it. How's that feel? That's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, they all served a role, and their role was to be disposable.
Exactly. And that's one thing also you brought up, the ship too. Jocelyn Muriel's ship, okay?
Yeah.
It gives me some pretty serious Slave One vibes. I'm just saying. I don't know if that was
Oh, you mean Razor Crest vibes?
Razor Crest. Remember some pretty Razor Crest vibes. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Because I was playing through the game earlier and I was like, that ship is just so similar. I don't know. What do you think?
It's cool. I don't know that they were digging in the Bounty Hunter game pile and coming up with it. I mean, Doug Chang comes up with amazing concepts all the time, like 1,000 Before Breakfast, and honestly, most of those concepts that we did were inspired by stuff that he did. But Jaster's Legacy, the ship that Jango Fett flew, in Bounty Hunter, and then was subsequently destroyed, and then replaced by the ship that blew it up, which is a prototype pursuit class ship called what he called the Slave One. That was, when George said, yes, you can explain the origins of Slave One, that's where that whole game thing came from. I'm going to give Jango a cool ship that he loves, that his mentor loved, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to blow it up like Mad Max loses his car in every damn movie. It hurts. It hurts when you see that thing blow up. But the thing that blew it up is his next ship, and he's going to get it. And he's cool. It's one of 6 prototypes, and he's going to destroy them all except for one.
Yep.
And he's going to call it Slave One, and he's going to escape, and that's cool. So I got to make all that up, and I don't know if that's ever going to survive, any of the canon or anything like that. But it seemed to me to be a fun way to explain how he'd end up with a brand new shiny ship, and be able to use his old ship as a way of Rosada, his buddy, his broker, sort of saying, I don't even understand why you fly that old relic, it belonged to Justin Murillo. I know, the Mandalorian who took you under his wing. Maybe you just want someone to take under your own wing. So in that brief little line,
boom,
that's all you want. You don't want to get into a whole bunch of dialogue, but in that one little moment, you're like, okay, Jango was once taken in by a Mandalorian, and now he's carrying on the Mandalorian way, and part of that is this clunky old ship that he feels some sort of bond with, and you see how Din Djarin has got a bond with his ship, and it gets beat to hell, and then it gets fixed up, and then it gets blown up after it got fixed up.
How crazy was that?
So does that mean they're going to kill Boba and Din Djarin's going to run off with the Slave One? I don't know. These are the things going through my head.
Exactly. So when I was thinking about where this could go next, now
you can't have too many Mandalorian badasses at the same time. This galaxy ain't big enough for the two of us.
Exactly. There's something that went through my mind too that I was like, whoa, this could be crazy. Now this is complete speculation. I was on the phone with my friend earlier talking about this, but what if somehow, this is insane, Din gets in touch with Han Solo? I don't know how this could happen, but let's say, Han loses the Falcon at some point and it ends up in Jakku, for The Force Awakens. What if he loses it to Din or something crazy happens?
No, that's not right. No, you can't have a Mandalorian flying the Falcon. That's not going to work. I appreciate you're trying to connect the dots.
It's crazy though.
I think those need to be kept separate. Maybe he'll end up killing Dash Rendar and getting the Outrider.
Oh, my brain also went there. For Dash is, for the sake of Dash Rendar.
He's never going to show up. Nobody cares about Dash.
You say that, I'm telling you. We all thought, I don't know, forget, before he said his name, Toro Calican from that chapter 5. Remember that the gunslinger character? I swear he had the kind of thing for a second. Yeah. I swear he was going to say Dash Rendar, but they wouldn't have made him that terrible of a person. They really wouldn't have done Dash Rendar that dirty.
He just looked like a kid who wanted to be a badass. That's all.
Oh yeah, and there's something I want to bring up too, just for the sake of talking about it. The Dark Troopers showing up. Okay, were you involved with Dark Forces at all? Because that, to me, the look was awesome. The look was great.
No, I helped out. I didn't. That was all Justin Chin's creation. He was the director on Dark Forces and Jedi Knight. I just kind of stepped in as a support role on doing some cinematics and some of the special effects and some of the art in the game. But that story, the character, the Dark Troopers themselves, all that came from Justin. So it was fun to see, his stuff pop up in my Facebook feed or whatever, going, wait, what? Dark Troopers, the Mandalorian?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Wow. So it's kind of cool that they're digging into the bag of the most loved lore from games, honestly, to help kind of drive some of the new storytelling that they're doing with Mandalorian. It's super cool.
Oh, it's so awesome. And you'd be the first to probably point it out. I mean, being someone that makes video games, me and Pete Fletcher, who does Around the Galaxy in our network, we always talk about how every episode's like a video game. Like there's this, and then this, then there's this big moment in this, and then they leave. It's like it's like I said earlier, the bounty hunter story is great because you start out kind of small. They dig deeper into the Death Stick. Oh, the Death Stick leads them to this. Then they go from UO4 and they meet Malastare to Tatooine, and then you go. I mean, it's just fantastic. It really is so good.
Yeah, it's before this Robert Rodriguez episode, my favorite episode was the Carl Weathers one. I just absolutely love that one. It was just like an old abandoned military Imperial base, lots of action, lots of just old school Star Wars fun, right? Stormtroopers around every corner, TIE fighters chasing you down a canyon. I mean, these are all things that we were coming up with in these games a long time ago, and to see them on film again is pretty spectacular and fun. And then this episode comes out, and we get to see Boba Fett come back from the dead, literally, in a big way, and it's awesome. And know that they're going to carry forward at least in a couple episodes as a partnership to get the kid back, and just waiting to see what kind of amazing thing these two guys can do, together as a team. Yeah. Even if it's a strained partnership, but right now it seems like it's pretty much a sealed deal that they're going into this. Yeah. He got what he wanted. He wanted his dad's armor, which is rightfully his, and now he's got to pay back. And I hope that doesn't mean he dies and has to give the slave one to Jin Djarin, but it may just turn out that way.
It just becomes a Boba Fett show. It's just like they just take they just add the child, and like I feel.
But I appreciate what they did. Like they blew up the ship, they killed it. Like you can't have somebody come back and say, "I'll put that back together again." Nope. Like it's Mad Max's car, it's gone.
Oh yeah, it's gone, and it blew up. I do like that factor because the whole show started with Din having to make a choice with the child. Okay, I'm going to bring him to this, bring him here. And then now we finally get that resolve. And then he has this strong connection with the child, right? And that connection is rooted in the ship and everything. And then obviously when the ship blows up, the only two things he finds are the silver metal knob, right? And then he finds the Beskar sword. And his journey now is not to bring the child to someone. It's really, I do think it's going to be, leave the kid from himself.
I guess he's still got to find a way to, leave the kid with somebody he can trust. So he can go on. I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of fun to see Boba come in to just be pure ruthlessness again, because Din Djarin hasn't seemed that ruthless in a while. He seems, like a decent guy. He just cares about this kid, and he's pretty cool with his blasters, and he's pretty great with it, but he doesn't seem like especially brutal or ruthless. And then Fett comes in and reminds us, like, Fett was not a nice guy. And but he does what's right, because they all have a moral code. That code is my word is my bond, whatever, so I'm going to carry it through. So that's cool too. But it was fun to see him just get ruthless and be a badass.
It was incredible. The second he got that suit of armor on, I mean, that was
even before he got the armor on. Before he got the armor on, he was whacking stormtroopers with the toothpick, with the bantha toothpick.
To Morris's acting is just like the face. The moment of everything is so intense. And you've worked with him. What was it like working with him?
Yeah, it was fun. Well, true story. That day that I lived in San Rafael, California, just near San Francisco, and the recording sessions were in Burbank, so down in LA. And that morning I got up thinking I had all kinds of time to get to the airport. And then at some point I realized I got the flight wrong by an hour, right?
No.
So now I'm panicking, because like this is the day that Tamara Morrison and Clancy Brown are going to show up to do their voice roles, or one of them, and then the next day is the next guy, and I would hate to miss it. So I panicked. I jumped in my 1960 Volkswagen Beetle, and I drove. It normally takes like 45 minutes to an hour if there's no traffic. This is 2002, so this is also a few months after 9/11. So there's new security measures at the airport. I had no chance of making the plane, but I floored it, and I drove that Beetle from San Rafael to Oakland Airport in 37 minutes flat. Parked the car as close to the airport as I could. Ran inside. I was like the last one on the plane. They're about to close the door. Security was light. It was amazing. Like I couldn't believe I got there.
Miracle.
That shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have happened at all. I was thinking I was need to catch a later flight, and I'd missed Tamara Morrison's session. I think he was first, and then I flew to Burbank, took a deep breath, and then met Tamara Morrison. Went through his voice lines, and our voice director Dara O'Farrell masterfully guided him through 4 hours of awesome sauce. And I was just pinged as needed to provide context or
Sure.
motivation or background, or if I felt that the line didn't really fit the meaning of the scene, I was there to kind of add that, but let Dara do that. And it was fun. He was super energetic. He loved doing it. He loved the character, and he was, it's like, I didn't get to do anything in the movie, but now I have a whole hour long story to be the star of. So he absolutely loved that. And when I told him who his nemesis was Clancy Brown, he's like, "Well, I better bring it then." So in the lines where they're facing off against each other, he already knew he'd have a pretty formidable opponent. So and he was great, and just a lot of fun. To watch work, and not a professional voice actor in the sense that voice actors usually show up and just plow through hundreds of lines. They don't need any really direction or guidance. Well, that's not fair. They do need direction sometimes, but they really just show up and plow through. So we knew it would take a while to get through all this stuff because he wanted more context, and we brought some animatics for him to look at, or some scenes or some concepts and things like that. And that was great. To really let him get into the character that he didn't really get to explore that much in the movie. So
that's the thing too. I didn't realize it till you ending on that note. He didn't really get to play Jango for more than probably like 7 or 8 minutes of screen time with dialogue.
Yeah, and the most electric part, I guess, was the scene where he and Obi-Wan face off on Kamino, right? Where everywhere can make your way into the interior once or twice.
Yeah.
Ever been to Coruscant? Maybe. I'm just a simple man trying to make his way in the universe.
Yes.
It's just, he was just those guys. And if you'd seen the movies Tamura had been in before, like Once Were Warriors, dude is intense. And super talented. So it was just a scratch of what he can do. So it's great to see him like bring that back again as Boba now, 20 something years later, the son of the character he created in Jango, and take it to a new level. That's awesome.
That's the thing. Like, this is the second most acting we've got out of the character now, compared to what we got in Attack of the Clones and now what we had in I guess Star Wars Bounty Hunter. It's really kind of beautiful. I don't know. I think it's so badass that he gets to reprise this role, and almost in the same context. I mean, obviously we know Boba's a clone, but I mean, it could be a little bit different, but it really is very similar delivery. The look is very different, which I think is fantastic, with the bald, all scarred up. I mean, he looks so cool.
Yeah.
And it's just
he's been through a thing or two.
Yeah, he's definitely been the bottom of a Sarlacc pit.
Well, and then it makes me wonder. See, I love the show so much now. I'm not being so much of a critic, but like if I sit back, I'm like, wait a second. The most accomplished bounty hunter in the galaxy somehow escapes the Sarlacc, which we all knew he would. Somehow loses his armor, which is bound to happen. And then there's a guy living a few miles away who's sporting his armor, running a town as a town marshal for years, and everybody seems to know it except Boba Fett. Because if he knew it, you'd think he'd go up there and be like, "Give me my armor back."
See, I agree.
Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe I mean, I've seen all the rumors, but maybe Cobb Vanth was the one who found him, and so Boba Fett owed him and let him wear his armor for a while. I don't know. But it's like, I'm willing to look past all these plot holes because I just want to see him put the suit on and kick some ass. And I was rewarded for that. Yeah, I was rewarded.
You'll find this kind of funny, that back there, that Boba Fett cut up. For anyone that can't see, let me enlarge my screen. So this right here, I kid you not, Mandalorian came out, I forget the exact day, but that Tuesday before it came out, I saw that on Facebook Marketplace for $18. I'm like, come on, how can you pass that out? You
Yeah,
know, it's
right,
a
yeah.
1995 cardboard cutout. I imagine it came out when the special editions released,
Probably.
and I was like, I'm gonna buy it in a heartbeat. This, honest to God, has been the greatest single investment of my adult life. like this character has came back and then like donned the armor again, and this is probably worth. I mean, not that a cardboard cutout is worth anything, but this lady could have listed this for probably $50 and would have got $50 for it, you know, just a week later. And here we are with this crazy cardboard cutout in here. I don't know.
It's cool. It is one of the coolest looking characters, but the thing is, it's not just about the look, and I think that that's the thing that Tamir Morrison did so well in the game Bounty Hunter, and now Pedro Pascal does so well in The Mandalorian. I mean, you don't see their faces, right? Much, right? You saw his once, you saw Jango's a few times, but what they deliver behind the mask, right? Their voice, the way they embody the character, it's amazing because you end up being so invested in this character whose face you don't see, which is unusual, right?
It's so strange.
Yeah.
Like it's a beautiful thing. It really is. Like there's one part where Boba, and you can kind of see it above your head in the little background image, but he turns around with this like such a cool look, and without saying any words, without doing anything, it's just like the mood of that character. What we've always wanted, what we've always needed, is just there. You know, I find that a very hard thing to convey. And like the second episode of this season was literally a guy in a suit of armor, a frog, and a baby. And like you're watching it, and they're all conveying their own weird sense of character. And you're like, how did this cost $10 million? And like everyone is watching it. You know, it's just like that's what Star Wars does so well. And you're someone who's created Star Wars, and that's such an important thing to have to put into perspective. Is like, you know, Bounty Hunter could have easily has flopped, but to me, the story still stands really strong. And I don't know, the cinematics look really good. And like I think you said, that was the first one or the only one ILM ever did for a video game.
Yeah. So at that time, ILM had never. Well, okay, they had worked on a couple shots for The Dig. They did an asteroid animation thing, but they hadn't really done any other work with the games group. And also ILM had never done a fully animated feature before. Everything they'd ever done had been, you know, special effects on live action plates, right? Or real actors in special effects backgrounds, one of those two. And what happened was, after the team that had mostly done the Hulk, the first Hulk movie, they were I guess in a sense about to be either laid off or reassigned to the commercials team, which had done some TV commercials.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, we knew that it was way too much work for all of our LucasArts animation team to do all the cinematics. There's about an hour's worth of stuff, which I heard about ad nauseum. This is too much, cut it in half, but we couldn't. It was an hour long. That's what it is. I cut a lot anyway. Believe me, I've got the original draft here. It would have been 3 hours long.
Oh,
but
wow.
So, you know, our team would do some things in the in-game engine, but we needed about 20 minutes worth done as pre-rendered full motion video sequences. And ILM, this team, the ILM commercials team, which was comprised of a lot of the animators from the Hulk, were available. And it was George who said, put them to work, this might, and they came to us with a bid that was just eye popping. Like there's no way we can afford this. These games were under 10 million at the time. It was probably at a budget of 6 or 7 million. And it was in the millions, the budget they were talking about. And once again, George Lucas said, no, I mean, come on guys, make it work. This is one of the great things about working in that organization at the time. He told them, just do it, and do it for a price that won't break the bank for the games group. And they did, and they did an amazing job. And Paul Griffin was the director on the ILM team. He was fantastic, and we shot the whole thing with sort of Videomatics. We had a few people from our team dressed up as with a Boba Fett helmet, sitting in a room pretending they're in a spaceship, just acting out the whole thing.
Yes.
And Paul directed that perfectly, just to get the most out of the script that I gave him, and to help me cut out the parts that didn't make sense. And then we'd go to dailies, and we'd start seeing the work come together, where the ILM team would take game assets and juice them up a bit, not too much so it didn't look completely different than the game, but enough to give it a consistency and a look that was interesting. And they every day that we would go in and watch the dailies, we would just be blown away by what they did. It was amazing. And then all that was done with the existing voice work that we got from Clancy Brown and Chimera Morrison, and Leanna Wellesley, who played Zam. Not Wellesley, forgot her last name. They were all great, and it all just came together so well. And I didn't think it was like, man, are people going to want to sit through a 30-second or 1 minute long scene of Jango Fett in the cockpit of a ship with this other bounty hunter, Zam? Is that going to be interesting at all? And it was. And you see in Mandalorian, they're framing some of the shots in similar ways.
I was going to say, very similar.
And as long as you have something interesting to say and some cool lighting, and you move the spotlight around to make it look like the ship's rolling through space, and get some shadows falling and things like that, it can be interesting. And if you get a little conflict in there too, that's what I tried to work on to make those scenes more interesting, is to have Zam and Jango have this conflict, right? Where in every scene they're arguing about something, but then they get with the program and move on to solve the next problem.
Yes. That the cinematics still stand out to me, and the Kamari Vosa moment, where you finally get her full reveal and she walks in, and I mean, like, it's a pretty stellar interaction between
the blast helmet of a Mandalore warrior, something I'm not seen since I was a Jedi. I must have cut down 20 of your kind myself.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the second scene I wrote for that game. I totally knew how I wanted to play out. I wanted her to be super scary, maybe a little sexy, but mostly scary. Mostly scary. That some of that part wouldn't really, be a great idea these days. But she was just badass. And really, mean. Which is what you need a villain to be. And I didn't want to get into it too much, but this idea that at some point in his life, Jango might have been a slave at one point and might have been unable to follow his own destiny and follow his own will is another reason he wanted a son unaltered, to train him to, you're your own man, you're your own, and to, never take orders from anybody, never be allied with anybody, don't trust anybody, whatever those things are that he passes on to Boba are things that maybe he learned out of a life of hardship. And that was part of what went into the open season comic a little more, after the whole Mandalorian Civil War and issues that they had there,
which was mentioned, by the way.
Yeah,
really
Jango ended up, being sold into slavery for a brief period, but we didn't really get into all that. So that's why when Kamari Vosa says, I have ways of the Bandagora have ways of weakening your mind and breaking your will. That's what they did to her, right? They tortured her, they turned her into one of them, and then she turned the tables on them and became their leader.
Yeah.
She's basically threatening to turn him into a mindless, thug, and that's the worst thing in the world for him. Like his sense of self and independence is number one. So like that makes him kind of angry.
Yeah, of course, understandably so. Yeah. I mean, that's that character through and through. And I love getting a chance to talk to you about this. Is there anything from that first draft that's like kind of cool that would have been interesting if it had made it? I don't know. Was there something you're really proud of that you couldn't fit in there that you were hoping would get, part of the overall?
There were quite a few. Yeah, Jango had a run-in with IG-88 in the original draft. When they were, because this idea that in the game, as far as you're concerned, only Montrose and Jango got the invitation from Tyrannus that in this bounty hunt, right? Those are the only two invites you see. But the idea was there were a bunch of other bounty hunters got the same invite, right? there's just too much story to tell in one game. And among them would have been IG-88, who's been around forever. I assumed, right? Nobody had ever really said how old he was, but I assumed he was always there. And there was a scene in the game when Jango finally learns of the system that Komora Vorse is hidden at. He still doesn't know what moon. There's many moons there. One of the moons of Bogdan. He doesn't know which moon it is, because that's what we heard in the movie. I was recruited by Tyrannus, a moon of Bogdan.
Yes.
Okay, I'll run with that. Let's say Bogdan has many moons. One of them is going to be a burial moon, which is just the whole moon has been turned into a burial ground for some war that happened on Bogdan a long time ago. That makes a spooky place. It's all very inspired by the 13th Warrior, which is a movie I saw around that time. That was just a great Viking retelling of the Beowulf legend, right? But it had lots of spooky cult people who lived in the hills and came down and raided villages, and that was just like probably the biggest inspiration for the Bandogor. Anyway, there was a ghost ship in orbit over the planet Bogdan that was destined for this burial moon. So it's full of dead bodies. And Jango was going to get out in a vacuum suit. So it was Jango Fett in a suit, a space suit, with magnetic boots clunking around. And just when he finds out where the ship was destined for, that's when IG-88, comes in. And so the two of them were going to have a battle while the ship was falling back into the planet's orbit. That was too much, so I had to cut that whole thing.
John. That's some bold storytelling there.
And then the other one was Dexter Jetster. He's the guy who ran the diner.
Yes, of course.
Episode 2, the one who told Obi-Wan about the Kyber dart, and how rare it is. Well, so before he ran a diner, he must have been an arms dealer. And he's got lots of arms, so he makes a great arms dealer. So I thought, I'll just have him be an arms dealer and was on a space station, and Jango will visit him to, buy upgrades and buy armor and stuff like that. So maybe he and Jango actually go way back. And so he had a shop in the original design of the game that you would come to over and over and over again, where her space station served as a hub. But later on, as I filled out the story more and realized that I needed to blow up the station and sadly kill Raz, that didn't really work out. Plus, it was a whole meta game we didn't want to get into. But Dexter Jetster was going to serve an interesting role, and
that's pretty cool.
Those are a couple things that probably didn't survive the final cut. And there's a few things that cut at the end too. There was going to be a 10 years later. After the game ends with Boba accepting the deal from Tyrannus to be cloned, as long as he gets the first clone for himself, and that's it. And he carries wounded Zam back to the ship, and two of them fly off. And then the next, and then in episode 2, he shoots her unceremoniously. But so I wanted to get a little bit deeper into that, and so there was another scene. There was a whole bunch of stuff that would have happened as a bonus chapter, where Jango is just hanging out with Boba in his apartment, looking out over the clone army, looking out over them, and just feeling proud. And Boba kind of feels like he's different. He's sad because he's not really, like them, and he feels sad for them because they never got to be a kid. And Jango just says, "Hey, you shouldn't feel sad for them. I feel proud. So should you. You are different. You're my son." Mm-hmm. And then they're going to go on a fishing trip, mine fishing, where they fly the slave one over the water and drop mines. And that was a deal he made with his kid, that they were going to do that after he gets back from this one last job. And that job is the assassination of Padme, which Jango wasn't really into. It's not his thing. It sounds too dangerous. He's already killed a senator on Coruscant, so he's not really sure it's a good idea to go back there anyway. Mm-hmm. And so he subcontracts it to Zam, and she screws it up royally, as you see in the movie. So he has no choice but to kill her. Yeah. So it kind of set up, why he ended up killing Zam.
I couldn't go on that fishing trip.
Yeah, and also, just to further point out that his job is dangerous, and as much as he, trains his kid how to be a badass and fly the ship and do some stuff, he doesn't take him on some of the more dangerous jobs because he's still a father. He cares about his son. So there was some of that. Anyway, that was all way too much to fit into a game. So it's all just in a document. It's all in a document in my computer somewhere. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the thing to kind of like round this all up. I think it's really important the fact that you said you had interactions with George Lucas, who has been a notable someone who said he is not a Mandalorian, to now him being a Mandalorian.
Did he say that, or did Disney say that, or did
I don't know. I thought when they made Clone Wars that it was very obvious that, because there's one character, I think his name's Almec, and he says something on the line.
He says that Jango was not a Mandalorian.
Yes, but he
was a fraud.
He was an elitist Mandalorian who was like this he was a terrible guy, and maybe he doesn't count foundlings as actual Mandalorians because they weren't born on Mandalore. But I don't know what was something that maybe George, bestowed to you that kind of, really helped you write and create this pretty incredible backstory, I would say.
Well, again, it was just permission, really. Like, I mean, a bunch of authors, right, had written things about the Mandalorian backstory and the Mandalorian. And really, we weren't going back thousands of years to talk about, old conflicts. We were talking about, 20 years, right, or 30. What happened in recent history that would make sense and carry on the Mandalorian tradition. And that's where I latched onto the short story by Daniel Keys Moran and Hayden Blackman wrote the open seasons. It all fit. It's just like, to us, the Mandalorian was not something you're born into. Like the Mandalorian way isn't something you're born into out of royalty or bloodline or anything like that. It seemed to be something that and honestly, if you watch the Dark Knight Batman movies, right, they kind of ended that way. Batman passing on everything he knows to Robin. It's just you find someone who is worth passing this on, everything you've learned and that they're going to be loyal to that cause, and they're going to keep that moral code. And that happened when Jango was a kid. Somebody took a chance on him and said, in my original draft, I think I had Jango was really angry with the Mandalorians because they brought this civil war to the planet Conquered Dawn that he was from. Okay. He was he and his family were just farmers. His father was a lawman, a journeyman protector, and the Mandalorian civil war came there and just destroyed everything. So like they hated both the true Mandalorians, as Jaster called himself, and the Death Watch. They was all bad news, but his family helped Jaster and his men, and Jango like threw rocks at him because he was just pissed. He's just a little kid who just and I thought that Jaster might that kid's got some spunk. I like that. I'm going to keep an eye out for him. Anyway, Jango ends up helping them escape, and anyway, takes him under his wing. That's the whole thing. He was adopted by a fearsome group of warriors and raised as one of their own, and that has become accepted now in canon. That happened to Din Djarin. He was orphaned, and he was accepted and taught their ways, and that is the Mandalorian way. And you can leave that, like Montrose did, or you can have a different belief in something. And there's all this stuff I'm not sure I fully understand with Bo-Katan and the struggles for power on the planet Mandalore and all that kind of stuff. But there's something very pure about a warrior clan or a warrior. They're not a species. It's just a warrior group that has a certain belief system and training system, and they will take on younglings or foundlings and train them in their ways. That makes it a thing that I think is very palpable. You get it. I mean, this sort of stuff happens in human history all the time. You're not just born into it, right?
No. Well,
for the Spartans, I think you had to be a pure Spartan to be a Spartan.
You had to be trained from the ages of like 5. Pretty sure.
They couldn't adopt some kid from another country and say, you make a fine Spartan warrior. It didn't work that way.
Nope, it's all genetics and last names. No, I'm so glad to have you on for this because this really is this most recent episode is my favorite, and I'm so glad to have gotten a chance to talk to you about just the backstory and how a little bit, and I think it's important. You should 100% admit this, John, that a little bit of what you contributed to Star Wars is now fully manifested. And for the super nerds that looked at the chain code, I mean, you contributed to that, and that's a really awesome thing. You might not have gotten story credit, but to know that your legacy, even if it was just for a single video game, is still carried on in its own weird way. I think that's just such an important thing, and I feel very lucky to talk to you about it. And is there any final thoughts for that? I don't know. Are you proud of that? Or did it excite you?
Well, again, I can't ever be. I would never say that the makers of that show are looking at the video games we made and saying that was brilliant. Let's work that into our show somehow. I think we're all reaching into the same pool of great ideas that George Lucas gave us to play with. Right?
Yes,
it was this amazing sandbox, right? And so I took cool ideas from an author who wrote a little short story that he probably didn't think would turn out to be much of a thing, and that's where Jaster Muriel and Conquered Dawn came from. And then Mandalorian comes out and puts on the armor, has a silent character who was an orphan who was taken in by them, and now he's learning maybe he's not really the real Mandalorian. This is all really cool stuff that all started with, ideas, 40 years ago. And so we're all just playing with it. But yes, when I saw the chain code thing and I saw, somebody else did the work of translating it. I have the same program here somewhere. I could probably do that. And saw Jaster, Conquer Dawn, Man. Yes, I did not invent those names, but I made sure that the torch was passed, and now the torch is continuing to be passed in this amazing show that I'm tuning into every midnight at Thursday. Can't wait to see where it goes.
It's special, and this was great. And John, I cannot thank you enough just for the time to talk about this and how much this game means to me alone is a pleasure to talk to you about. But I just think it's special. I don't know. I think we're in a really unique area of Star Wars right now where you never know who's going to come back, and whenever someone does, they throw all kinds of great Easter eggs just to make sure it's to the top to your Star Wars level. But John, where can my listeners find you? I mean, anything special you're working on right now? Anything you got in the works coming up?
Let's see. Well, like I said, I work at Turn 10 Studios on the Forza franchise. So that's Forza Motorsport, Forza Horizon, which is developed by Playground Games in the UK. And can't really say what I'm working on. Just I'm working on stuff in that world which is cars and open world driving and all kinds of awesome fun stuff. So no bounty hunters yet.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm working on these days. And in the meantime, just having fun, having my Star Wars fanboy, my inner fanboy being rekindled by great shows like Mandalorian and obviously participating in really fun shows like these where we get to just talk about the stuff and that we grew up in different eras loving the same stuff, and it's just cool. The torch is continually being passed.
It's incredible. Like, I don't know. I will definitely introduce my kid whenever I have one to this game. Like that's something that has to get passed down, and I'm very thankful for a chance to talk with the great games creator currently. It's really cool. And you never know what will end up being in 10, 15 years from now. There could be a complete redo of your game, or they ask you to show back up. You never know. I mean, it's awesome. It's Star Wars is in a really cool place right now. But John, thank you for your time. And for anyone listening, okay, you just listened to the Bombadcast. You know where to find us, okay? If you like this, please subscribe, like, share, rate us 5 stars on iTunes, review us. If you really liked it, make sure you go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/Beyond the Blast Stores. Okay, keep with us online at beyondtheblaststores.com. And also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Bombadcast. John, we usually end on this. Every guest says this phrase. The phrase is stay Bombad, because that's just like stay positive, stay excited. John, can you give us a great stay Bombad to close out the show?
Stay Bombad. This is the way.
producer or Bombast.